At A, I'm uninviting my dad to my graduation ceremony because of what he said about my mom. For most of my life, my father was a ghost. Not a tragic one, not some aching absence. Just gone. No calls, no letters. No stories passed down from. Relatives with misty eyes, just silence. And in that silence, my mom built something out of nothing. She raised me alone, took jobs she hated to buy uniforms, skipped meals so I could eat, smiled through exhaustion so I wouldn't grow up feeling like I lacked anything. And maybe I did lack something, maybe the dad hole was real, but I never felt it because she filled the air with so much love. That's what makes this so much harder. Because now, at 23, with a master's degree about to be placed in my hand, I'm supposed to be thinking about the future, but instead, I'm stuck managing ghosts. He came back into my life barely a year ago. Through a fluke of science and spit and algorithms, a half-sibling's DNA test pinged me. And suddenly, I had 5 more brothers and sisters, and a father who now, finally, admitted I existed. Before that, he called my mom a liar, said she baby-trapped him, said he tried to get a DNA test, but she blocked it. That's his story. My mom's is different. She says he abandoned her the second she told him she was pregnant, refused to speak to her again, and build a new life like we were some ugly scratch on the record. I've heard both versions. I've lived in the middle, but I've accepted that I'll never get the full truth. That's something you have to do, eventually choose peace over proof. So when he reappeared, I didn't slam the door. I let him in slowly. Coffee dates, group dinners with my new half-siblings, a few awkward text chains. I wasn't ready to call him dad, but I was ready to give him a chance. I was trying. So when graduation rolled around and I was finally preparing to close the chapter on years of study, it felt right to include him. Like maybe this could be a moment that stitched something back together. I knew my mom would be there, obviously. She's been there for everything. The one clapping loudest in school assemblies, the one who helped edit my personal statements, the one who cried when I got accepted into uni, and then again when I told her I was staying for postgrad. There was no question she would be there. Front row if possible. But I thought maybe my dad should be there too. I brought it up during dinner. My half-siblings were excited, curious, maybe even proud. It felt good for a minute, like a real family, or at least a version of one. Then he said it, that line, that tone. Oof, your mother will be there, won't she? The way he said it, like her presence was radioactive, like she was a threat, not a woman who raised me by herself while he started over like I didn't exist. I paused, said, yeah, she'd be there. He just nodded, but the air got tight. Later, I pulled him aside. I asked directly what he meant. And that's when he said it, the real reason. That his wife, his second wife, the woman he started over with, would get jealous if he was near my mom. That she gets physically ill from jealousy. That she can't be in the same space as my mother because it would cause her emotional distress. I swear I stopped breathing for a second. So you're saying, I asked slowly, that you might not come to my graduation because your wife might get jealous of my mom being there? He shrugged, said it was complicated, that he wants to be there, but he has, to protect his marriage, that his wife's mental health can't take that kind of strain. I was stunned. I mean, what do you even say to that? I wanted to scream. She's not the one graduating. I am. This isn't her day. It's mine. And if she can't handle seeing a woman who hasn't spoken to her in 20 plus years, then maybe she's the one who should stay home. But instead, I just stared at him. And then I said, well, she's going to be there. She's earned that seat more than anyone. So if that's a problem, don't come. I walked away before he could say anything else. I didn't cry. Not then. Not until I got home and sat on my bed, staring at my cap and gown hanging in the closet, thinking, why does it always come back to them? Why do their choices keep bleeding into my milestones? I didn't ask to be born. I didn't ask for the drama. I just wanted one single significant day to belong to me. But apparently even that was too much. Since then, that's been a mess. Family members calling, texting, chiming in. My aunt said I was harsh. That he didn't say he wouldn't come, just that it was complicated. That I should be gracious because he missed so much already, and now he's trying. That I don't know the full story between him and my mom, so I shouldn't judge. But that's the part that gets me. The full story is always this vague. Shifting ghost people wave around when they want to silence you. They say I don't know it, but they won't tell me. They say there's more to it, but refuse to explain. It's emotional blackmail cloaked in mystery. And I'm done with it. I'm done making myself small to preserve other people's comfort. My mom will be there because she should be. Because she's the reason I'm here at all. Because she sacrificed more than I'll ever know to get me through school, to keep me whole, to give me the life I'm now about to walk proudly into. My dad, he had a chance. He still has one, but that chance doesn't come at the cost of my dignity. He doesn't get to show up only when it's easy, only when it doesn't inconvenience his wife's insecurities. You don't get to skip the hard parts and still expect a front row seat to the proud ones. You don't get to ignore 2 decades and then flinch at the woman who carried the weight you dropped. And you definitely don't get to make my graduation the day I earned a battleground for your unresolved drama. If he really wanted to be there, he'd figure it out. But I'm not rearranging my life for a man who spent most of it pretending I didn't exist. The fallout came fast. Once word got out that I told my dad not to come to the graduation, the family group chat basically lit itself on fire. Cousins who haven't texted me in months suddenly had opinions. My uncle, who once forgot my birthday 4 years in a row, sent me a 3-paragraph message about how I was jeopardizing the fragile process of reconciliation. It was surreal. Like suddenly I was a character in some drama they'd all been following and decided this was the episode where they chime in. But no one, not a single one of them, had seen what I'd seen. They hadn't watched my mom come home from a 10-hour shift, still in her work uniform, reheating pasta for the 3rd night in a row so I could eat before she sat down to help me study. They didn't see her cry the night we thought I wouldn't get my financial aid. They didn't see her cheer from the stands alone when I walked the stage for my undergrad. They didn't see how she carried this family without help, without child support, without weekends off, without backup. So no, I didn't want to hear from people who thought my dad's effort this past year somehow leveled the playing field. I didn't want to be guilted into making space for someone who'd never built a single block of the foundation I stood on. My friends understood immediately. Most of them had seen the slow, cautious way I let my dad back into my life. They knew I hadn't slammed the door. They knew I'd tried. I'd invited him to birthdays, introduced him to his grandchildren because, yes, I'm a mom too, though that fact tends to get buried under all this family drama. My kids had met him twice. He brought them presents, asked them about school. He seemed like he was trying, and I wanted to believe that counted for something. But now I see that trying isn't always enough. Sometimes it's about how you try, who you center, what you risk, what you're willing to stand up to. My dad wasn't willing to tell his wife, "This is my daughter's day, and I'm going, and I expect you to handle your emotions like an adult." He wasn't willing to say, "Your jealousy is not more important than her milestone," and I couldn't force him to. But I also couldn't absorb the consequences of that refusal. My mother wasn't about to be hidden in the back row or ushered through a side entrance like some shameful chapter in his life. She was going to be seen, celebrated. She earned that. And if his wife couldn't deal with that, then that was their issue, not mine. I'm done carrying the emotional weight for people too afraid to deal with their own wreckage. The part that hurt most, though, wasn't even the conversation with him. It was the conversation with my siblings, my half-siblings. The ones I'd only just started getting to know. They were the ones who seemed most excited about the graduation. They talked about signs, flowers, booking time off work to make it. When I told them what happened, they were quiet. Then one of them, my youngest sister, said, "I really hope we can still come. We don't want to take sides." And I realized that's what this was turning into. A choice, like a custody battle over a celebration. Except there was no court, no judge, just me tired, frustrated, sick of being the adult in a situation where 2 grown people couldn't put their ego aside for 4 hours in a stadium. I told them they were welcome. Of course they were welcome. They were not responsible for our father's cowardice or his wife's insecurity. I wasn't going to punish them. But I could feel the shift. The way everything had to be handled now, managed, smoothed over. What should have been simple was now complicated. What should have been joyful had a bitter edge. Still, I pushed forward. I picked up my gown, tried on the shoes, practiced the walk in front of the mirror with my kids laughing behind me, clapping. Like I just won an Oscar, and for a moment, I felt proud again. Not just of the degree, but of the lines I'd drawn. The boundaries I'd set. I used to think family was about unconditional tolerance, that blood meant loyalty at any cost. But now I know real family respects you enough not to ask you to shrink. Not to twist yourself into someone else's comfort zone. Real family doesn't punish you for having expectations. The night before graduation, I got one last text from my dad. Just one sentence. "Still hope I can come if it's not too late." I stared at it for a long time, thought about the chaos, the lectures, the excuses, and I realized I didn't want to be cruel. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted honesty, accountability. So I wrote back, "You can come, but only if you're there for me, not to monitor my mom, not to keep your wife from getting upset, just to support your daughter. If you can't do that, stay home." He didn't respond. I took that as my answer. The next morning, I woke up early. My mom helped with my hair. My kids gave me a little homemade congrats card with glitter glue smudged across the front. My best friend picked us up in her car, and we drove to the venue with music blasting and the windows cracked open to the first real heat of summer. When I stepped onto that stage and heard my name called, the applause hit me like a wave. And right there in the middle of it all was my mom clapping, crying, beaming like I'd won the Nobel Prize. No one else mattered in that moment. No regrets, no empty seats, just her, just us, just me. The air after graduation felt different, lighter, not because everything was perfect, but because the weight of pretending was gone. I wasn't waiting for a text that never came, or a surprise appearance, or an apology I knew deep down wouldn't arrive. That space, the one that used to be filled with hope for what a father-daughter relationship could look like, was now filled with truth. It wasn't the storybook reunion. It wasn't forgiveness on a stage or a last-minute hug at the finish line. But it was real. I had shown up for myself, and the people who mattered showed up too. My mom, my kids, my friends, even one of my half-siblings, the oldest, snuck into the back row and waved like we were childhood pals. That meant more than I expected it to. He didn't bring fanfare, didn't ask for selfies or declarations of loyalty. He just showed up, quietly, fully, for me. Afterward, while we were standing outside in the sun, taking photos and juggling bouquets and program booklets, he walked up to me and said, "You did the right thing." I blinked. "What?" Do you mean? With Dad, he said, with all of it. You set the boundary, you stuck to it. That's not easy, especially not in this family. He laughed, then half bitter, half liberated. We talked for a few minutes. He didn't try to defend our dad or minimize anything. He just said, I know you probably feel alone in it, but I get it. I do. That moment stayed with me. Still. Does. Because it was the first time I realized I wasn't entirely alone in this strange in-between world of half acceptance, half denial. Someone else understood. Someone who had grown up in that house with that man and saw how fractured things could really be beneath the surface. The days that followed were a mix of quiet celebration and slow processing. My mom kept calling it your victory lap, and every time she said it, I smiled, because she was right. It wasn't just about the diploma. It was about everything. Behind it, the late nights, the part-time jobs, the tears, the inner battles, and yes, the people I had to leave behind to protect my peace. I think we're taught, especially as women, to absorb hurt for the sake of harmony, to sit next to people who've diminished us and smile because it's not worth the drama. But sometimes it is worth the drama. Sometimes the storm is the boundary. And maybe, just maybe, it clears the air for something better. A week after the ceremony, I got another message from my dad. This one was longer. He said he was sorry. Said he should have made a decision based on what I needed, not on what would keep the peace at home. He said he knew it was too late to undo that day, but he hoped it wasn't too late for everything else. I didn't reply right away. Not because I was angry, honestly, I wasn't. I'd already moved past most of the rage. But because I didn't want to react out of obligation. I wanted to be sure that whatever I said next was for me, not to manage his emotions. It took me 2 days. Then I wrote back, I appreciate your message, but I need time. If you want a relationship with me, it has to start with honesty and accountability. I'm open to that, but I'm not going to do the heavy lifting for you. Not anymore. His reply came quickly, I understand. I'll wait as long as you need. I haven't said anything since. And that's okay. There's power in the pause. Power in not rushing into resolution just because someone finally showed up after 23 years. Meanwhile, my relationship with my half-siblings has grown in unexpected ways. Not all of them, but 2, especially the oldest and the one who originally found me through the DNA test. They've asked real questions, listened without defensiveness. One of them even admitted, we always knew there was something off about how Dad talked about the past. I didn't push. Didn't. Dig. Just let the conversation unfold. Because as much as this started with rejection and hurt, it's led to something better than I expected. Clarity. Autonomy. New connections built on real respect, not family myth. I think that's the lesson I'll carry with me, not just from this chapter, but through everything that comes after. That sometimes protecting your peace looks like burning a bridge. Sometimes it looks like saying, no, you don't get to be here, even when it's someone with your DNA. And sometimes it means accepting that not all reconciliations happen on your timeline, or at all. But the absence of a perfect ending doesn't make your story any less whole. It just means it's yours, fully, unapologetically yours. I don't know what my dad expected when he reached back into my life. Maybe he thought I'd be so hungry for connection that I'd overlook everything else. Maybe he thought a few dinners and some stories about when he was young would smooth it all out. And maybe, on some level, he thought I'd choose and choose. That version of family, messy as it is over the one I already had. But what he didn't realize is that I was never choosing between 2 parents. I was choosing between silence and self-respect, and I chose me. I chose the mother who showed up. I chose the kids I'm raising with more intention than I was ever given. I chose the version of family that feels like home, not the one that looks good on paper. And honestly, I'd make the same choice again 1,000 times over. After everything, it's the quiet moments that linger most, not the blow-ups, not the texts, not even the graduation itself. It's the silence afterward, the way you sit with it, the way the absence of someone becomes its own kind of presence, like an outline of a shape that never filled in. I didn't realize how much space the idea of my father had taken up in my head until I stopped making room for him. Not just physically, but emotionally. No more adjusting the seating chart, the mood, my expectations, just to accommodate someone who still wasn't willing to show up in a way that mattered. The piece that followed that decision wasn't explosive or cinematic. It was slow, soft. It was walking into my living room with my gown draped over one arm and seeing my kids asleep on the couch with graduation confetti in their hair. It was my mom curled up with a blanket and wine glass saying, I'm proud of you, and meaning everything. It was knowing that I had done the right thing for myself, even when it didn't make everyone happy, especially when it didn't, because that's the thing no one tells you. Choosing yourself doesn't always come with applause. It comes with guilt, with criticism, with people whispering about how harsh you were or how you should have. Just let it go for one day. But letting it go for one day becomes letting it go forever. That's how patterns are built, through the little moments where we stay quiet instead of speaking up, where we smooth things over instead of making things right. I'm done with that. I've learned that peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of boundaries. Real ones. The kind that say, if you love me, you will meet me where I am, not expect me to crawl toward your comfort. And if you can't do that, then love becomes lip service. My dad texted again a few weeks later, said he was thinking about coming by just for a quick visit. I told him I wasn't ready, But I didn't want to start this relationship on a lie. That if he was going to be in my life, it would be because he respects me, not because he wants to fix his own guilt. He said he understood, but I could tell he didn't like it. That's fine. I wasn't saying it for his approval. I was saying it for me. And the more I spoke up, the easier it got. Not easy, never easy, but easier. It's strange, the way clarity grows. At first it's jagged, sharp, emotional, but eventually it gets smooth, solid. You stop defending your choices because you realize you don't have to. The people who get it don't need explanations. And the ones who demand explanations never really listened in the first place. I'm not angry at my dad anymore. That part burned out. What's left is something quieter. Sadness, maybe. A kind of grief, not just for what he did, but for what he could have been, for what we could have had. But grief is honest. It's clean. You can mourn something and still move forward. That's where I am now, moving forward. I think I'll always wish it had been different. That he had stepped up when it mattered. That he had told his wife, "You don't get to make me miss my daughter's graduation because of your jealousy." That he had sat in the stands, clapped, taken a photo, and proved that he could put fatherhood before ego. But he didn't, and I can't rewrite that part. What I can do is make sure my kids never have to guess if they matter to me. I can show up fully, no hesitation. I can be the kind of parent who says, "I'm proud of you," with my whole chest. And I can show them, by example, that love doesn't mean sacrificing your self-worth for someone else's approval. That love, real love, means standing firm in who you are and still holding space for others to grow if they're willing. I don't know if my dad will ever really understand that, but I've stopped waiting for him to. I've stopped letting other people's fears become my burdens. I don't have the full story of my parents' past, and maybe I never will, but I don't need it, because I have my story. And in my story, the heroine isn't silent. She doesn't bend to make others more comfortable. She doesn't let guilt disguise itself as family loyalty. She stands up, even when her voice shakes. She says no when it matters. She protects her peace. She finishes what she started. My degree isn't just a piece of paper, it's proof. Proof that I can hold the line. That I can choose integrity over performance. That I can honor the people who showed up and release the ones who didn't. My life will be full of milestones. This was just one. There'll be others, big ones, messy ones, joyful ones. And every time I face one, I'll remember this. I don't need permission to protect myself. I don't need validation to make the right call. And I don't need every family member in the room to feel whole. I just need the people who show up with love, with respect, with no conditions. Graduation was the end of a chapter, but it was also the beginning of a new one where I'm no longer the girl hoping someone changes. I'm the woman who changed herself, and that is more than enough.